Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You know those Florida man stories we all love?
One's going to wonder if you're reading the news or watching a comedy sketch.
Exactly. Well, HBO's new show, It's Florida Man, dives headfirst into this phenomenon, and the craziest part, it's all based on real events.
It's amazing how Florida Man has become this cultural phenomenon, this badge of honor for some. It really shows our fascination with the bizarre, that truth is stranger than fiction kind of
And
thing.
these stories definitely deliver on that, so get ready, because we're diving into some of the wildest tales from the show.
Let's jump right in.
All right, first up, we're headed to Orlando, summer 2019. We meet Phil, a guy who really loves his bass nectar.
Really loves Bass Nectar. We're talking 33 concerts in 3 years kind of love.
Exactly. So naturally, when Phil hears Bass Nectar's playing a 3-day show in Colorado, he's got to go.
Only problem is,
Let's just say Phil's bank account was looking a little emptier than a gator's stomach after a long winter.
and we all know what happens when times get desperate.
Craigslist.
Bingo. But instead of the usual roommate search or trying to get rid of that old couch, Phil posts an ad that's, let's just say it's a little different.
Willing to do anything, within reason, for cash.
Bold move.
Talk about a recipe for disaster. What do you think was going through his mind? Was he that desperate for those Bass Nectar tickets?
I mean, it's got to be more than just the tickets, man. It's maybe a need to shake things up. Even if it meant, taking a risk.
Well, among all the interesting responses Phil gets, one definitely stands out. Enter Steve, the self-proclaimed toe enthusiast.
And Steve, he has a proposition for Phil. A fantasy, he calls it.
And here's where things take a turn. Steve wants Phil to, get this, cut off 3 of his toes, cook them up, and eat them.
While he watches, of course.
Of course.
He's going to hand it to Phil. His first thought was, man, I wish this was just a sexual thing.
Right.
But ever the people pleaser. He actually considers it. I mean, hey, who are we to judge, right?
No judgment here.
So to make things even weirder, Phil brings his friend Carolyn along to meet Steve. And Carolyn just so happens to be a former Orlando Magic dancer.
Can you imagine that car ride?
I don't even want to try. But here's the kicker. You'd think Steve, the toe enthusiast, would be some creepy dude, right?
Hiding in his mom's basement, probably.
But no. Steve's got a nice apartment, offers them beers, the whole 9 yards. It's this bizarre mix of normal and totally not normal.
Like he read the How to Not Be Creepy handbook and then just checked it out the window.
Makes you question everything you thought you knew about stranger danger, right?
So we've got Phil thinking about giving up his toes for some concert tickets.
Talk about dedication.
But trust me, this next story takes weird Florida to a whole other level.
Oh, it does.
This time we're meeting Chris.
Our favorite Econoline van enthusiast.
He decides to take a little solo road trip down Interstate 675.
And a 2002 Econoline van, naturally.
Naturally. So picture this. Chris, missing a few teeth, buzzing with nervous energy, decides to ditch his dead-end job and a recent heartbreak for, well, something.
A search for fulfillment, as his friend Dennis calls it.
Right. Not exactly the kind of trip you'd expect someone to take after a breakup.
Especially with that whole, the lines between my dreams and nightmares are blurred thing he's got going on.
Yeah, not exactly reassuring, is it?
Not really.
So Chris ends up at this fishing camp feeling restless.
Drawn to the wilderness.
And he sees a fence and thinks, that's the border I want to break.
Classic Chris.
And he stumbles right into a face-off with Florida's most famous resident.
Mickey Mouse?
Even more famous, a massive alligator.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. And this isn't just a quick hello, either. This is a fight for his life.
You're kidding?
I wish I was. He loses an arm in the struggle. An arm.
And he survived.
2.5 days in that swamp before he was rescued. Can you believe that?
Talk about resilience.
Right. But here's where things get really interesting. Chris doesn't just think this was a random alligator attack.
What do you mean?
He thinks it was his reincarnated mother.
His mother. Reincarnated as an alligator.
That's what he says. Trying to teach him a lesson or something.
That's one way to put it.
So you're saying you don't think his mom came back as a gator to teach him about the dangers of trespassing?
Nah. I'm going to have to go with no on that one.
No.
But hey, at least he's finding a positive spin on it, right?
That's one way to look at it. But don't you think there's a danger in romanticizing these kinds of encounters with nature?
I see what you mean. I mean, it's one thing to find meaning in a traumatic experience. It's another to ignore the very real dangers involved.
Exactly. And speaking of dangerous, it's Florida. Man doesn't just cover alligators and toe enthusiasts. They've got human drama, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
How about a full-blown feud between a mermaid performer and a witch?
A mermaid and a witch. Only in Florida.
Right. And as if that wasn't enough, the witch's husband is a police officer who's really into backyard sex magic rituals.
You can't make this stuff up.
Oh, but they did. And just when you think it can't possibly get any weirder, there's the guy who tries to blow up his ex's trailer using a pan of ragu tomato sauce.
Ragu, like the pasta sauce.
The one and only. And he did it all while wearing a bull onesie.
Okay, you definitely can't make this stuff up.
It's like every episode throws a new curveball of crazy at you.
It really makes you wonder what's going on down there in Florida.
Right. It's like a whole different world.
But hey, at least they're keeping things interesting.
It's true, though, isn't it? I mean, you've got to wonder what makes these Florida man stories so catchy.
Right. Like, why do they go viral so easily?
Is it just because they're funny and crazy, or is there something more to it?
I think there's definitely a bit of that there, but for the grace of God go I feelings.
Really? That's not me.
Exactly. But at the same time, we can't look away.
That's like a car crash you can't help but slow down for.
Totally. And I think it also taps into our desire for connection. You know, we share these stories with each other. Like, can you believe this actually happened?
Only in Florida, right?
Exactly. And Florida's got that reputation for a reason. He's got the sunshine, the beaches, the alligators.
And maybe a slightly more relaxed approach to law enforcement.
Maybe just a tad.
Yeah.
But that's all part of what makes it so unique.
It's like its own little world down there.
With its own set of rules.
On headlines.
Definitely the headlines. So the next time you see one of those Florida man stories popping up on your feed.
The ones that make you question everything you thought you knew about reality.
Remember, there's a whole lot more to it than just the headline itself.
Yeah.
It's a glimpse into a world where anything is possible.
Where a mermaid and a witch can have a full-blown feud.
Where a guy might try to blow up his ex's trailer with a pan of ragu.
And where a simple road trip can turn into a life-or-death encounter with a very determined alligator.
It's a wild ride.
That's for sure. And on that note, I think we've officially reached peak Florida man for one episode.
Agreed. Until next time, everyone.
Keep your toes away from Craigslist.
And watch out for those rogue pans of ragu.
And remember, the truth is out there. It's just usually a little weirder in Florida.